feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming in late Saturday night. It's May 10th, and coming up on tonight's show, it's myself and Britt Robson from some weird corridor here at Chase Center. We're going to give you our immediate reaction to the Wolves' Game 3 win over the Warriors. Want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Watermelon Water, WTR, MLN, WTR. Watermelon Water is cold-pressed watermelon juice that you can purchase at Whole Foods or Target. I love it. It's delicious. A good replacement for maybe a sports drink or coconut water. If you have that, it gives you all of those hydrating capabilities that you might get in a sports drink or some type of coconut water. But I just think this one tastes way, way better. Again, you can get these at Whole Foods or Target, which means if you have an Amazon account, you can throw it into your account there and have it be delivered to you from Whole Foods, or at Target, you can use Instacart as well. Really do love the taste of these. And for me, it's kind of become a replacement at home. If I'm watching a movie or watching a game or something like that, rather than having something unhealthy, watermelon water is a good, hydrating, healthy, and delicious drink. We love them. We love you. Check that out. Again, Whole Foods, Target. Throw them in your Amazon cart or on Instacart through Target. Would love if you tried out watermelon water. All right, Britt, let's jump right into this one. The Wolves win, and I think the place we start 102-97. The place we start is probably with Julius Randle.
Absolutely.
And the game that he had, we've been kind of talking about this throughout the postseason, that he has been a consistent source of sort of offensive stabilization for this team over the course of the playoffs. And I thought that again tonight. Sometimes, me and you were sitting next to each other during the game. We're like, oh, another one of those post-ups, fadeaways like that. It's not necessarily the most efficient offense.
Right.
But I think what's really important about Julius's offense in this series against a very good Warriors defense is he can get to that at whatever the efficiency is. He can get to his offense whenever he wants, when oftentimes this Wolves offense outside of him is finding themselves running into a wall. What did you make of what he was able to do? I kind of on both sides of the floor. I thought he was impactful defensively as well.
On offense, he's like three different players, which is really kind of cool as you unpack it. First of all, he is an old-fashioned bully on the block, somebody who can just bang and bang and bang and then turn around and try to put the ball in. Also on putbacks, he's somebody who doesn't immediately go right up. He waits and sees if he can A, draw the foul, B, have the guy coming down as he's coming up and getting the putback. So he's that kind of a guy that knows that contact is his friend most of the time. Guys like that generally don't do finesse shooting or really good passing out of double teams coming at them. The fact that he can do both really expands his game. And the fact that he can have that little floaty touch shot that is a fadeaway jumper from like 12 feet. Yes, you're right. It's probably a 40% shot, which isn't great. But at the same time, if you've got the double team coming at you and people are crowding you and you know that guy is not afraid to shoot it and it goes in a decent amount of the time, that a semi-repeatable pattern is still a pattern that defenses remember. And so therefore defenses think about reacting to. They don't give Julius that shot the way you might give a poor three-point shooter the shot, because it's too close and you never know. He might lean in instead of go back,
Right.
And then the passing, I think the reason the passing keeps getting better is because, we talk about familiarity all the time, and we began to say, okay, well, here it is January and he's beginning to change his game. And all of a sudden, Julius is becoming more and more a part of how the ball gets distributed. And it's because he's familiar. And I think that maybe it's the higher stakes of the playoffs. Maybe it's a lot of things. But what it is to me the most is that there is more of a variety of ways that he is passing out of the post or passing out of plays where it looks like he may be shooting. And I think that has created, it certainly helps the three guys off the bench and Jaden McDaniels, guys that don't usually have a lot of initiation when Randle is on the floor or Ant is on the floor. And I think it also, Jaden is really helped by that. Ant hits Jaden as much as anybody, but Julius hits Na and Nas a lot. And that's important. Not quite as much tonight. I think both he and Ant definitely were into getting theirs a little bit more than moving things around, but you can't argue with 12 assists.
Right. Well, so I think as you called it, the 40% shot.
Yeah.
I think actually the goal of the 40% shot is to generate the passes and how that happens. And I do think it's higher than 40%, and it gets higher and higher the deeper he gets into the paint. If he gets to like 6 feet there, that's at 60%, whatever the number.
It would be interesting to know how much higher it gets as the banging continues. I mean, it's the old running back.
I think up, right?
Exactly. And I think that it's the old, running back grinding down the line kind of thing. He's getting 5 yards of carry instead of 3 because everybody's worn out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's part of that too. And so when that happens, again, it helps. But so
it's funny is we're wrong.
Oh yeah, goes down.
I was looking at it here. Short mid-range during the regular season. Guess what it is? Exactly 40%, which is 4 to 14 feet.
I just never lies.
and then the long mid-range shot is actually 52%. During the regular season.
Face up.
And it's significantly lower volume that he's taking those far ones. But anyways, my point is the deeper he gets, the more of a threat the defense thinks it is.
Mm-hmm.
The more once it exceeds a threshold of they get scared of how deep he is, then the second defender comes, the defense shifts, and that's when he has the spray out capability to the corners, to the top, whatever it might be, and that's how he ends up, with 12 assists in this game. I think he had 11 last game as well, so it's 23 over the last two. I mean, I don't say this to take away from Mike Conley necessarily, because I actually think Mike Conley was a big part of getting Julius Randle going offensively himself.
Right.
In pick and roll. Those two had a good chemistry tonight. But Julius is like the point guard on this team in many ways, and initiate in that he initiates where it starts, the initial spot that the defense has to react to.
First play of the game, I mean, they inbounded to him. Maybe they didn't inbound. Anyway, he got the ball off. Oh, I know what it was. It was a jump ball, obviously. And then when the jump ball happened, I think it may have gone to Conley or something. He gave it to Julius, who dribbled up the court. I mean, that struck me immediately. First possession, you're already having your point forward, power forward engaged that way. The other thing that I think is important to talk about tonight is that it worked at a time when I think there was a lot of stickiness. Randle and Ant took 51 of the 82 shots. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision, but it is different than the way this team usually plays. And some of it has to do with the fact that it's playoff basketball.
Right.
But I also think they both wanted to put their imprint on this game. It was a close game. They weren't going to trust their teammates enough to have them have it. Although it must be said that, Jaden McDaniels and Nasri combined for 6 to 7 from outside. And I know at least 2 or 3, if not more of those, came from Julius Randle. It's just a difference. I mean, we're not seeing the swing. You hear about, we need swing. We need to generate the good things. We need multiple driving kicks. We saw it in game 2. It was a more going away win. We didn't see it in game 1. It was a surprising loss. We didn't see it much in this one, and it was a nail biter right up until the last 2 minutes. I think the best way they play is either multiple driving kicks or just a lot of swing. either way, you're moving without the ball, you're moving the ball, and you're making quick decisions. It's a numbing triad of things that we talk about all the time. Not as much of that tonight. It may have had something to do with the fact that the Warriors were playing desperate, but also very, very good defense. And so it's frankly why I asked the question when I asked it. Both Julius and Ant regarded it as me criticizing them. And I don't think it's the best way for them to play, but it certainly wasn't a criticism. It was an honest question of, was it a factor of playoff basketball, or was it a factor of what
that
the Warriors were giving them?
51 of the, however, that's what Britt asked was, why was it so much more of the shot distribution went to Ant and Julius than it normally does?
Ant had 28 shots. Julius had 23. The team had 82. So,
see, I think they directly played off of each other. And
yes,
you go to the back to the beginning, like literally
it was a two-man game a lot.
But their individual volumes played off of each other. Remember the beginning of the game, Julius was getting it in literally the first quarter, the first 5 minutes of the game. I think he took 4 or 5 threes.
Right.
And what it was is Draymond was on Randle in this game again, and he was really trying to play in more in kind of like a free safety gap helper against Ant to play in there. And so then what Julius was doing was kind of moving to the top of the key, and they knew that Draymond's help would go into the lane. So anytime it got out to Julius, it was going to be a wide open, as it often was, or semi-open shot for him at the top. And what I think is encouraging about his game is they found that at the beginning, those are clean, easy threes. Julius is shooting 40% from three in the playoffs and has been recently. So you want to get that, but he wasn't hitting them. And he started looking tepid, and they were kind of like the ugly misses on his threes. That got me concerned at the beginning of the game that what are they going to be able to get to offensively right now? If what I tweeted, I remember right away in the first quarter, is Draymond is guarding Randle like Randle guards Draymond. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Just kind of having it there. So it was working, right? It's when they leave Draymond wide open to shoot 3 or 4 threes at the beginning of the game and he misses all 3 of them. That's what was Randle, and it sort of deflates. I think it's a testament to Randle that he found multiple different ways to get into the offense and find himself, whether it was through the post, whether it was through pick and roll as a screener for Mike. That's what I asked him about after the game was, you played offense a handful of different ways.
Right.
What contributed to that? And it was him actually reading the game. And I don't normally like when they say take what the defense gives you, but when you are a multifaceted player,
right,
and can take different things at similar effectiveness, you should then be taking it. And I don't think, if that little shot in the middle of the lane is a 60% shot from 2, as it was tonight, then that is the same as a 40% 3-point look.
And I think you gave a really good cover version of what happened. The depth of his decision-making, we can't really get into it because, it would take a pointer and a film, and this is what he did here. But it really is one of the things that the longer you watch Randle play and the longer you watch him play under Finch and the longer you watch him play with this group of teammates, aesthetically, it isn't fantastic. Intellectually, it really is pretty creative. And
elaborate on that.
He's not, you can't, it's kind of like you can't outfox your opponent if you don't have the ball a little bit longer than most people.
Sure.
If you give up the ball, you may be able to do it, in a really advantageous time once, but it's one thing to be able to kind of maneuver things, maneuver the chess pieces around the court and then give it up and then maybe put yourself in a position to get it back, or at the very least put yourself in a position to get the rebound or to screen or to, there's so many aspects of a half-court defense. And also, I think what he's also done is be that creative in transition. When he's coming down the floor, he's beginning to dissect the 2 or 3 people who are there and the 2 or 3 matchups that are there rather than the 4 matchups that are naturally there in a half court. And I think that there's just part of it is instinct and part of it is intellect. And the longer he's with his team, the more he knows his personnel and the more he knows that Finch is really approving of what's happening. I think the more he's letting his instinct blend into his intellect in ways that he just says, this is the best thing for the team. And it is often enough that the aesthetics take a back seat to the success.
So to get a little bit, well, he got Draymond into foul trouble, and I do think Draymond did have at least on that 6 foul, had a legitimate sort of gripe on that. That's not what I'm talking about.
The charge and the one at the rim. Yeah, he had 2 fouls that I don't think should have been called, but go ahead.
But point being, however the calls went, he was in foul trouble in the second half, picked up that 4th foul relatively early in the 3rd quarter, and then he's sitting out for the rest of the 3rd quarter and even the beginning of the 4th quarter, and then ended up fouling out. I think there was still about 5 minutes left in the game. It
was crucial.
Yeah. And he only played 11 and a half minutes in the second half. And he's pretty clearly their second most important player, right now. Yeah, that would have been
most
20.
Important on defense.
Yes, yes. And the most important on defense, I thought, in the first half of Ant, of slowing Ant because of that free safety gap help thing. Right. I was saying Ant looked, it's different than the Lakers series where it's just, there's always the guy sitting in the left gap and there's always the guy sitting in the right gap. I think Draymond sort of kind of apparates, sort of like shows up here, shows up there, is confusing Ant, was confusing Ant, and Ant had a terrible first half.
Yes.
And which played off of the, not terrible, but inefficient game 1 and game 2 that he had.
Right.
But now you get Draymond basically out of the game for the second half, and Ant, after he scores 8 points in the first half, scores 28 points in the second half, and actually starts throwing those big punches, that big dunk, that starting to get a rhythm for his 3. So I thought that those things really played off of each other because it was Draymond that was slowing Ant, and Draymond was quote unquote guarding Randle.
Right.
So you had to make those kind of bend off of each other.
Yeah. And the problem with not having Curry is that Steve Kerr was stuck with, I said we were going to win with defense, but we still need to score sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And if Draymond's in foul trouble, my balance gets even crazier. So I'm going to have to sacrifice some defense to try to score some points.
Right.
And I think that is a trickle-down effect. If a team is already shorthanded, and with Curry, they're woefully shorthanded, and then you get Draymond in foul trouble, and Draymond is the guy who is kind of intercepting Ant's thought process or rhythm and how he gets, because everybody knows,
good way to put it,
from just inside the arc to the top of the foul circle is when Ant starts to decide what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And when that happens, if you have a really brilliant defender, and you put it very well, and so did Finch 2 or 3 days ago when somebody asked him about Draymond, he said he's everywhere, just exactly what you said. He has a knack, and when people say he's everywhere, what that means is he knows enough to know that if he's here, he will impact the next step. And so it feels like he's everywhere because he's so good at anticipating and then so good at executing his anticipations. So, which is all to say that Julius Randle playing a game in which he kind of takes Draymond out of the game for the second half, and having a great second half accrues some to Julius Randle.
Right.
Just as when Ant starts to get going, Randle gets the triple-double. I mean, Randle doesn't get a triple-double if Randle's worried about his own,
Mm-hmm.
you know. It was kind of remarkable. Randle almost had a triple-double in the second half.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it was I got it here. He was Julius Randle was 9, 8, and 9 in the second half.
Yeah.
So you know, he just or take it back, 11, 8, and 9. He was 7, 4, and 3 in the third quarter and 4, 5, and 5 in the fourth quarter.
Now read Ant's second half line.
Ant's second half line was 28, 2, and 2.
And what was the shooting?
10 of 16.
And it was 6 of 8 from 2, 4 of 8 from 3.
Yeah.
So I at halftime I looked up what his numbers thus far in the series were. So that is elite, right? In the second half of tonight. But before that, so you take the first 10 quarters of the series, and Ant had 51 points, 25 rebounds, 9 assists, was 4 of 15 from 3, which is 27%, and was 14 of 32 from 2. I mean, I'm putting that together because I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, me and Britt got to have a conversation about like what the hell is going on,
right,
with Ant. And then he does that, and he got back on track. And Draymond being out is part of it. But like, to what degree are you thinking about / concerned about what he's done in the first 10 quarters of this series versus what he just did in the last 2 quarters? Do you still have a lot of concern about
well, I have a lot of concern with I acknowledge that Golden State, I've been saying they're an elite defense ever since I really kind of did a deep dive on them for this second round series. And I knew that the numbers were there and everything, but I did not realize how well they execute and actually what top drawer defenders they have, specifically in Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler.
I would even say too, man, like they're quote unquote bad defenders. Like they put in the work, like Pods. Pods is obviously that's like a matchup advantage for any of those guys, but he gets there, he gets into you, his closeouts are on point. Like it is. I remember when you and I were kind of arguing at after the last episode, and I was thinking like, I wonder, you kept citing, the number one defense after Butler, since they acquired Butler, and that's true. And I just, without Steph, and I know Steph isn't like some great defender himself, but
he actually is underrated. Though.
He for sure is. But what my thinking was at that time is, it's like, well, were they the number one defense for the last 30 games of the season because Steph was helping them on offense? So now they're playing defense as a set defense,
yes,
in that sort of way. And I think that is true, but this is, without Steph, an elite defense still. And I think we saw that again tonight through the creativity of Randle, but also just the overall, to what you were just saying, like the overall execution of pretty much everyone they bring in is either a very talented defender or a very sharp defender. And I think that's just largely what Ant has had to kind of hopscotch through in this, is there aren't really super weak points for him to be able to attack, or at least things that he can go to repeatedly.
And then they extend their defense in one of the things when Chris Finch first came here as a coach that I always really enjoyed was he was interested in this really weird space in a basketball game that is not really an offensive possession and not really defensive possession, where a team has just grabbed the rebound. Yeah, it was the Vando. Yeah. And they have a lot of, small town Vandos on their team. A lot of guys who play Vando-ish, but don't basically hang their hat on it totally. Right. Pods is totally a Vando thinker. In terms of what he tries
without the physical capability.
Well, he tries to poke check the ball. Somebody brings it down. A lot of them have that. I mean, Santos even, came into the game in game 1 and just did that 2 or 3 times. And I'm just thinking, Jalen Clark does it. Sure. They're just guys who just say they're opportunistic about that period of time when everybody is just kind of taking a breath and mentally going from defense to offense or vice versa.
Sure.
And they're going, this middle ground is when you can pounce on somebody. And the Warriors do that very well, I think. And I think that's one of the reasons why they are gambling on a fast pace, quick, early offense, because they want to sustain that momentum that they have gotten from, okay, they missed the ball on offense. They want to see if they can poke it free and get an offensive rebound, but they want to keep that kind of pack, like,
right.
let's get hungry and get after it kind of thing. And then when they get the ball, they want to get the defensive rebound. They want to just zip it up. That same idea that they want to sustain their self-image as a team of marauders on defense.
Marauders.
And I think that when you have a team like the Wolves that come and go with their concentration on playing the game the right way, you can ambush teams like that. And the Wolves have been an easily ambushed team for most of the regular season. Now, the evidence shows now against the Lakers and now against Golden State, clutch time does seem to be a time when they do lock in. And to bring it all full circle, a lot of that may have to do with the fact that they have figured out a formula where they run a lot through Randle and they run a lot via Ant through Randle. And that is a successful enough template that the Marauders don't really have as much of a shot.
Let's grab our first break here. Let you know that today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. I know you don't even know what the numbers are, but who would be a Wolves player that you would say is either going to have a big game or underperform in Game 4?
Game 4.
Then I'll give you some of the numbers.
Okay.
Put your microphone by your face, though.
I think Ant will get over 25.
Okay, we got Ant at, I think his is 27.5.
Ooh, that's a good number. That's a tough one.
They're all pretty tough in that sort of way.
I do expect Randle. I think he's playing with a tremendous amount of confidence right now, and sure. Finch, I think, is. Finch was measuring how full blown to get into the Julius Randle experience, and I think he is totally into it now. And so I do think that any combination of Randle numbers,
19.5 is his point total. I think I would agree with that. That because again, even that when he's ran into some obstacles over the course of this series, he has actually found ways to be able to.
Well, and the other thing about that is you can't just be taking away his points.
Right.
You want to be taking away his dimes. You want to be boxing him out. You have to stop him on multiple fronts, which means that you can't.
Save it for the podcast. This is an ad read. You can look up all these totals on prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. It is actually fun. I mean, this is like literally what I do with my friends. Like, oh, big Nas game, Jade, whatever. How is this going to go? All the Warriors players and not just the Wolves.
Take the over on Julius Randle.
19.5 points more than there.
John Randle, I think.
More John
Randle.
Never
produces.
PrizePicks.com or the Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code Dane for a $50 sign-up bonus when you place your first $5 lineup. Where would you like to go next? I mean, Randle and Ant from a Wolves perspective.
Let's go negative.
Okay.
I think Dante DiVincenzo had a horrible, horrible game, and he has not had a good playoffs in general. But I think this was the nadir. And I think it was – I don't know why the Wolves kept acceding to the idea that a switch of Dante onto Butler. I know they worked it pretty creatively, but the Wolves did not have to comply as often as they did. And Butler cooked him.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was good for DDV's headspace because he's already missing threes at a rate that he's not accustomed to.
Started taking weird ones too.
He's used to being a big game player. He's used to being an impactful player in multiple ways. And he just has shot blanks in terms of the way he's able to impact the game right now. And, he's a human being. I'm sure he's going through it right now.
Tonight it was blanks. I would say largely for the playoffs, despite how terrible he has been shooting from three, I think he has found other ways to impact the game.
Right.
But you're right. Tonight, I mean, we were sitting there and brainstorming, is this the worst Dante DiVincenzo game of of his time in
I tweeted
Timberwolves?
that it was. I mean,
yeah,
I
think it was too. I mean, he really got caught in it. I would actually extend, not to move away from Dante, but I would extend it out to, it was a really rough bench game overall, when that's, you know, in many ways, like this team's third superstar is their bench group.
Good point.
There.
Yeah.
I mean, was probably the best of the group. I mean, he was 3 for 3 from 3, but they weren't consistently finding him. His value was really just as a spacer.
His defense was really hit and miss. There were times where he got undressed too.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, I'm just looking at the stat line, and you'd go, you know, 3 for 3. You wouldn't be like that was a bad Nas game, but it was clear that this group was missing a punch from the bench. DiVincenzo again really struggled. He finished with 2 points, missed both of his threes, was fouling, had a bunch of offensive foul turnovers, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, after bouncing back in a major way in game 2, another goose egg, for him, and that was really problematic because they wanted Nickeil or Dante out there.
Right.
Rather than Mike, because they're at least a little bit bigger.
Right.
And maybe this ties into just Jimmy Butler in general, who got a little playoff Jimmy going in this game. But playoff Jimmy is and always has been a product of matchup hunting.
Yes.
And finding that, and he found DiVincenzo. It's like, okay, Pods, come set a screen for me. Now I got DiVincenzo on an island. Okay, Nickeil, I got him on an island. And we both love those guys as defenders.
Right.
But that is in the weight room. Jimmy Butler versus Dante DiVincenzo is not close. Jimmy Butler versus Nickeil Alexander-Walker is not close. And it's what, when clutch time came around and Nikhil's not giving you anything, Dante's not giving you anything, and you're like, okay, it's going to need to be Mike Conley then to close the game, and he's going to be the hunted.
Right.
And I think
they brought Rudy back, and actually Rudy had his best minutes of the game.
Exactly. And that's the answer to this hunting thing.
Yeah.
Because you watch the first half and you go, oh man, this is going to be a problem. And what are you supposed to do? Are you not supposed to switch? Like you have to kind of switch that.
Right.
What they need is Rudy to be out there to protect whoever Jimmy's going at. The problem the Wolves are dealing with Rudy, and I guess we could throw him into the bench group because he's basically a bench player in this series or postseason for this team, just from a minutes total. They need him out there for the defensive purposes, but Finch and the Wolves are so much struggling to get offense that they really only feel comfortable, it seems, playing Gobert when they have a lead. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how this went over the course of the
turnovers. Game. I mean, the thing about it is,
nobody trusts him right now.
Some of Rudy's turnovers are not listed as turnovers. I mean, they're kind of it's a sloppier brand of half-court basketball when Rudy Gobert is on the court. I don't think that's remotely deniable. And against a really, really undermanned team that needs points off turnovers, that is something that you just can't afford.
Right.
And I think it's really significant. One of the rare things, and this has happened a couple of times, I think it happened on the Lakers series too, but the Wolves committed 21 turnovers and only gave up 13 points off them. I remember when we were talking about all the turnovers, I think it might have even been in game 1 against Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing. I remember
you were like, but only 10 points off turnovers.
They are doing a really good job of limiting the damage of their turnovers, which has traditionally been how other teams have gone on runs. They get offensive rebounds, they get turnovers, they don't match up in transition, and they get open threes. Everybody knows the drill by now.
But this Warriors team is not talented offensively. They're not highly talented offensively. And so I think where the Wolves end up getting hurt in these turnovers into transition situations are when somebody can dribble down and Buddy Hield's run into the corner there and he can catch it and shoot that shot.
Right.
But there was 2, if not 3 times where it was a 2-on. I remember 2 specifically where the Warriors have a 2-on-1 and Nickeil was back one time and Conley was back another time. And those guys were able to blow up the Warriors 2-on-1 there. And It's just that they have limited offensive
they're
personnel.
just not used to having people take command of, Steph on transition is usually one of the people down. The guy's indefatigable. I mean, he is just constantly on the run. And if he's not running around, cramming people into picks over and over and over again, he's going and doing all this other stuff. When he sees that there's a transition opportunity, he is on his horse the other way. And oftentimes he either pulls up for a 40-footer that goes in, or he nails somebody else. So you're right. This is the way they became a really fearsome team and won essentially 23 of their 31 games when Butler came over, is because Steph by himself, in his enabling of others in addition to what he can do on his own, makes that defense the kind that puts a team in a hole. I mean, it isn't a top-rated defense, but it is a top-rated offense, but it is a top-rated defense. And so Wolves fans learned last year what that does. If you have a great one side of the ball, the other side of the ball can be middle of the pack, and they can be damn good.
So I guess related to the Warriors defense is the Wolves offense, and just some of these power outages that they've been having that are sometimes turnovers, but remember the second quarter, they didn't score a basket. The Wolves didn't score a bucket the final 6.5 minutes.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, of the quarter.
Yeah, and
they only scored 1 point. It was an Ant free throw. I mean, they cannot afford these power outages to that degree, even if we are giving the Warriors the credit of they're a great defense or one of the best defenses.
Well, I mean,
in the playoffs.
Anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I was relentlessly negative, especially at the end of the first quarter and the end of the second quarter. It was disgusting to me because I really do think that they weren't playing smart. They were playing dumb, and they weren't matching up on defense. They weren't closing out on defense, putting forth an effort on defense, and on offense, they were making terrible decisions.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm not saying like dumb isn't the right word. I'm just going deeper into, because I was saying
sure.
I was saying that too. It's like it felt to me in the first half like they did not understand like what the puzzle was offensively. There, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I do.
It was just not even really directed. And again, we gave Ant and Julius credit, and basically, they found that out in the second half, or they found ways to be able to get that. I think again, largely Conley, Randle pick and roll started figuring some of that out. But there is this concern, I think, with the Wolves offense just overall for later, games in the series, or if they move on, where they're a bit slow at times.
Yeah.
To process. And I don't know. And every team has, even championship teams, they have their foibles. That's just theirs. And I don't know. What I said to you is I was like, I don't even know the answer of how much of this to put on Finch.
Right.
Because some of it, that has to go on Finch too. That just can't do, Ants.
Well, what are they waiting for is what I keep asking myself. What are you you can survey the court and still be moving your feet and moving, it's the dawdling that if I saw something like with Randle, quite frankly, I was really critical of it at the beginning of the year because it didn't deliver enough, and it's delivering now. So, I mean, as much as I just got through saying about him, aesthetically, I don't like it, but hey, it's not, they mark wins and losses. That's how you keep score, and is effective, whether you like what it looks like or not. So I have begun to trust and appreciate that as best I can. And the last pod we did, I think I was kind of saying, well, the guy had fantastic numbers. I didn't think he played very well. Right. If I looked at that,
but it all goes to the aesthetic, and and we're talking,
and
about
that's what I've got to get over, because that's my problem. That certainly isn't the Timberwolves' problem. And so tonight, it wasn't just aesthetics. It was that they weren't generating. They were allowing a much inferior team to outwork them and outthink them, and consequently grab a lead that even lasted until the end of the third quarter. And that was aggravating because the stakes of this game, I mean, let's face it, if Curry comes back and they have 2 wins, that's a hell of a lot different than if Curry comes back and they have 1 win.
Right. I think to defend you from 48 hours ago, though, to the it's the bogged down sort of part of it is there are ways that Julius Randle can be doing a great job right now, but also be playing a little bit faster and not be holding and waiting, because remember the space,
I agree.
quote unquote spacing issues with this team are actually ball holding issues, and just kind of stopping for 3 beats or whatever it might be. And Randle is a culprit of that. So I don't say that to mean he didn't play well. They definitely lose this game without Julius Randle. I'd say that to be I don't feel good about this Wolves offense right now because it's clearly not clicking on all cylinders. I do think the cylinders all still work. And that's that ball and body movement. That still works. They're just not doing it consistently. And it's because they're not going fast enough. The Ant cylinder, I was kind of afraid that wasn't working at halftime. I didn't know where his head was at. Okay, we saw that cylinder cylinder still fires. But to win this series or going forward, there needs to not be this confusion of fear of what it is that they can and can't deliver on.
Well, and the bottom line is, by definition, the further you go, the rougher it gets. And it would be rougher right now if they hadn't lucked into an injury. And so, but let's say, for example, Denver may, in fact, they're ahead of OKC as we speak. So that is the dream scenario, in my opinion.
Sure.
But OKC has a phenomenal defense and a much better offense than what Golden State has. The Celtics, the Cavs, both of those teams.
Oh, yeah, this offense won't work against them, and those teams are pretty much just as good defensively as the Warriors are. So we're not saying that to get ahead of ourselves, but we're saying that to be hey, a positive externality you could have from the rest of this series is, hey, let's figure out how to get the offense churning a little more and not have these dead periods. Get that feel and that rhythm of this is what our offense feels like when it's working, because I think we're through 3 games right now and they have very few things that they feel good that they can enact offensively.
And that is precisely why I think Randle has been given the keys.
Sure.
I mean, Finch has really Finch is talking about Randle the way he talked about Mike Conley a year ago. If he's on the floor, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And
what a year. Jesus.
But I mean, and Finch deserves his victory lap. He thought that this could be, and I'm sure he leans into it a little harder than I would, but damn it. It's working. And so, they are 2 games away from the Western Conference Finals for the 2nd straight season. And no one would have thought that in January, when they were lingering around 500 and they didn't really have an offensive identity that seemed coherent. So it is aesthetics more than success, but it is absolutely also that merely being a slightly better offense than you had last year in the playoffs isn't enough. It wasn't enough last year when the defense got picked apart in the conference finals, and it won't be enough this year unless you get your offense in gear so that your defense does not have to work as hard. You're not going to go far. And that has to be getting the bench back in gear, figuring out Gobert so he isn't so much a situational player, finding some way to get the Rudy Gobert of March and early April back. I don't know how. I have literally no idea when it comes and when it goes and why it comes and why it goes, but it does come and go. Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, it better be.
Right. Well,
the guy really has a very strange body.
Well, there's also, I mean, there's mental elements of it that I think like extend beyond him, where there's some trust issues going on now, understandably so. You know, I mean, he in game 2 fumbled the ball, and to the point where I got it. You know, I'm normally the guy being like, hey, if he's there and he's wide open on the roll, you got to get to him and trust the catch and, you know, do that, because if you don't, you are playing 4-on-5 and you end up having a first half like you had in the first half. But I get the hesitation at the same time too. I feel like he's getting kind of treated like, I don't know, the younger brother who'd be like, oh, we got to like pat him on the back and they're trying to give him the touches early and like trying to duck in for him on the first or second offensive possession of the game. And I think it needs to be, I don't know. I mean, just be a part of the offense.
Right, it needs to be a component. It can't be an optional adjunct.
And he is like barely that right now. Right. I mean, he is not one of the main pieces on this team right now, when he absolutely has been one of the main pieces the last few years. Guys who do not trust him to give him the pass. And then I think like even a couple times when Conley was going down and like Rudy was like, I don't know if Mike trusts me to give this to me here. So he's not even really going up to go get it, right? Because he doesn't even know if
they have missed more. Gobert used to be to the point where he was almost jumping in the air thinking a lob was coming and no one gave him the lob. Now I have seen more what I regard as lob passes that he is not thinking are going to be for him.
Right.
And that's, you know, I understand it. I don't, you know, he doesn't want to show himself up, but at the same time,
I think it would be a selfless and powerful thing to have a real conversation with his teammates about like taking acknowledgement for what he hasn't been able to do and what he's limited in be able to do. I think it's on him to refoster some trust here when by, you know, admitting some fault. Because what do we hear him say when we ever ask about this all the time? I need them to trust me. I need them to trust me though. I need them to trust me. Well, you know, and then I need to dominate. Well, you aren't dominating, so they shouldn't trust you. So how does this go? Like, these are your guys. I just feel like there needs to be sort of like a come to Jesus moment of this here. Again, we're nitpicking this stuff because, or whatever, I'll just say it because because you're thinking about this team going really far,
right?
And going to the conference finals and potentially going to the finals if that happens. Like this, there is an opportunity in your hand to go to the NBA finals,
right?
And there's no way this team is going to be able to do that unless they are and win it. Unless they are, all of these things, all of these engines are firing, and not all of them are firing, but they have fired at different points during the season. And for the ones that aren't working, as we've listed through here, we're talking about Nikhil, we're talking about Dante, we're talking about what Rudy isn't doing here. Well, let's get down to the why. And let's have these hard conversations that they say they all have with each other, and everyone can say whatever. And I believe that. I just wonder what those look like, those quote unquote hard conversations, when they're about what Rudy can't do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's the most important conversation, because Rudy is going to be extremely important in the rest of this series and any series beyond, because this team is so much better defensively when he's out there than when it's, you know, Nas or Julius at the 5.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because you have 3 skilled bigs in Nas Reed, Jaden McDaniels, and Julius Randle. And then you have the rim protector and the classic defensive stalwart. And you have to find a way to kind of rotate these skilled bigs in and around Rudy in a manner that maximizes him at both ends of the court.
Absolutely.
And the bonus of that is when one side is being maximized in a really positive way, the other side surges. And that gets to your mental point of view. I think that I made a big deal out of the fact that in his 27-24 point, game 5 clincher against the Lakers, Julius Randle set him up a couple of times within the first minute of the game.
Yep.
And I think that it's very important that Rudy Gobert gets off to a good start. Maybe it's a block shot. Maybe it's a transition layup somehow where he's catching it in full stride, but able to lay it in. Maybe it's a little, that little push shot he has. But whatever it is, it's got to be a little bit like usual.
Yeah, I think as your teammates, and I get this would be hard because it's hard for me to watch when Rudy just knocks one out of bounds, right?
Right.
But there's like from a very practical standpoint, like Rudy fumbling one of those passes and it going out of bounds is literally the same thing as a missed three.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that's not exact, that's reductive,
right?
But like, if there could be a little bit, I mean, how come when whoever misses, Dante goes 1 of 11 from 3 or whatever, that it's like, oh, we got to keep shooting.
Right.
You trust Dante to keep shooting. And I get Dante is a significantly better shooter.
And but in the entire first half tonight, I mean,
right.
There's like, if you're marking,
like,
if you're marking mental demerits, like, okay, you're going to have to stop doing that now. Right. And he doesn't. Well, then, what if Ruby fumbles once, twice, 3 times, and you ignore people and go into your little thing, or you don't rotate on defense. You don't find your guy, everybody has things that can be criticized.
Right.
It just gets back to the point that Finch used to make a lot, which is that Rudy Gobert makes loud mistakes. And he also is not a coordinated individual in many respects. It's remarkable how effective he is being as uncoordinated as he is.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, he is capable of looking clumsy a lot while having a good or very good game.
Right.
That is the opposite of damning somebody with faint praise. That is basically praising somebody while damning them in a manner that, I mean, at the end of the day, I
don't know how to say the inverse of
that. At the end of the day, a clumsy guy is like the key to everything that's happening for you all of a sudden, and it's a different kind of aesthetic problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right about one thing, which is you need to be close to maximized on both sides of the ball. We're talking about rings here. We're talking about going further than any team in the 36-year history of the franchise has gone.
It's there, man.
And if that happens, that will be an improvement on what we saw tonight at both ends of the court.
I think this is a segue that ties a couple different things together. One of these areas that was a bashing your head against the wall sort of thing, like this is feeling like right now during the regular season, was clutch time.
Yeah.
Right. And they've started to find some sort of a rhythm with that.
Yes.
In game 3 against LA and game 4 against LA, they beat LeBron and Luka in clutch time which is 5 minutes left in the game. They were down in those games, came back and won. And the lineup they closed with in both of those games was Nas at the center, right? Reed and Randle, those groups, clutch time,
and
Rudy
Dante for Mike, right?
Yes, and good call. But tonight it's the fourth quarter, and the Wolves start the fourth quarter, and they are down 69-73, and so Finch is not playing Gobert. He starts with the Reed, Randle, Edwards, and Conley lineup, and they kind of take them into clutch time, and then the Wolves take the lead, and it's 86-84 with 4 minutes and 20 seconds left, and who comes 7'2" to the scorer's table and comes out there because the Wolves have the lead, and then they close the game with Rudy from a defensive standpoint.
Right. It wasn't. I asked you at the time. I said, "Do you think that Finch is going to go possession by possession, offense, defense?" Actually, what he did is he left Nas in. So, I mean, they had a little bit of both, but Rudy was effective. He was getting rebounds, which of course was absolutely crucial.
Sure.
Because you needed, if you made them miss, and it wasn't that hard to make them miss, you needed to secure the rebound and keep the Marauders away, And so Rudy was good at that. And then you needed, the fact of the matter is, I think that the team was gassed. The Warriors were gassed, and so they weren't trying to shoot from outside as much as they were trying to get inside, where their legs didn't matter as much. And Rudy being there, I think, made a big difference. And they won that game at both ends. Randle and Ant took care of business at one end, and Rudy didn't solely take care of business. I'm not going to overstate it.
He did get an offensive rebound. Like he got fouled on an offensive rebound, and then Randle had that weird lane violation. Yeah, and he was hitting his free throws there. I just wanted to note that the Wolves are having a very good clutch time postseason.
Yep, good point.
When it was a nightmare,
right,
during the regular season, and tonight showcased a different style of closing lineups.
Right,
it wasn't Reed, Randle, McDaniels, Edwards, and DiVincenzo.
That's right.
It was Gobert, Randle, McDaniels,
right,
Edwards, and Conley.
Diversity strengthens a team. If you can win in different ways,
you talked about,
yeah, exactly. And I often talk about the offensive versatility, but you're talking about defensive versatility there, and I think this is important. I do think that having a situation where you can put Randle, Nas, and Rudy, say, for example, or something like that, Jaden McDaniels having that versatility that you can provide with Rudy on the floor.
I mean, Finch just said from the beginning of the season, right? We got to be comfortable with closing with whoever we close with, and different guys are going to need to sit. And I was always like, yeah, good luck. But, I do think that has sort of started to sink in. I think whichever one of, Nas, Julius, and Rudy aren't closing in that game, they're probably stewing a little bit on the bench, but kind of keeping it to themselves. Because they don't, but they all believe that they should be. It's just a tricky situation, and I do think broadly, it is kind of working, and I guess hyper focused on the clutch time. And you look at some of those numbers, and you would say it's actually working kind of great.
Right?
The optionality. And the acceptance of the guy who is asked.
And that is the biggest argument for keeping the rotation at 8, because you need to keep 8 people happy for the 3 that are going to be unhappy because they're not closing.
Right.
I mean, I wrote it a couple of weeks ago, and I just like it. It's an idea of mine that I like a lot. So there you go. But it's 8 starters means 8 closers. If you're going to say we have 8 starters, then what you're saying is we have 8 people who can close. And so all these 8 are thinking, I can close. And they should be thought of that way by Finch. He should be thinking about, of those 8, what 5? Because what's happened, Julius Randle has broadened his game. DiVincenzo, Na, and Conley bring different facets the same way that Nas, Randle, and Rudy bring different facets. And sometimes the combination of those versus the matchup at hand is what you want. Finch having free reign to do that is one of the most positive developments that happens. It's one of the reasons I think the Wolves might be able to beat teams that are perhaps better than them on paper, because they have the ability to shift gears very, very well.
Yeah. I always kind of thought of the 8 starters as 7 starters and 1 bench guy, Nikhil, I'm a Nikhil stan, but but so I would say, it's 7 closers, but Nikhil has actually closed, at the final, month of the season. He was used as a closer often, as Conley. It was kind of in lieu of Conley, for some point guard play there, but it is just, yeah, I mean, there's value in that 8, you know,
and keeping it 8 makes everybody happy, even if they get their, chain jerked a couple of times.
It keeps those 8 happy. There is an opportunity cost to it. I mean, there's guys in there who, they are like that aren't happy that, Rob Dillingham is not happy that he was not in, the rotation this year. I mean, I think like
that perpetually sore ankle.
Yeah. Well, that's real. But, I mean, just in general, is like there was a cost to honing this 8-man idea, and certainly caught a bunch of, flack from the media and the fan base and stuff for doing so. But I think this was, again, some of the vision of, yes, can Terrence Shannon Jr. at times be better than Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Maybe would have even been better tonight. Yes, but if you play the hand out 100 times, the Nickeil Alexander-Walker hand is going to hit substantially more than the Dillingham one does, or the Shannon one does, or the Clark one does. And that's not shade to those other 3 guys. We all like those guys too. It was just Finch has been kind of in a spot over the course of the season where they probably do have 11 rotation players, maybe 12 with Minot, but through that, like, kind of throwing out that embarrassment of riches and being like, nope, but these are the 8 best guys.
Right.
And I believe all 8 of them are 20-minute-a-night guys. And if I want them to be 20-minute-a-night guys, I got to only play 8, like I'm going to do in the, in the postseason. And a bad bench night. I don't know. It sounds like we're praising them, but it is kind of this idea of clutch time and being able to close with different things in different groups.
It was really put on the down low, I thought, but between the lines, we kind of discovered belatedly that Dante was not happy being on the bench. I mean, nobody ever really came out. It wasn't a story. It wasn't a thing. But in retrospect, you heard about, Finch saying, well, some people are unhappy, and I didn't appreciate Dante's having what he had to go through here to get here. And Dante was saying, it was rough at the beginning or whatever. He was used to getting 40 minutes a night under Finch, and all of a sudden he was not doing that. And
I get it from Dante's standpoint too. You're like, wait a minute, you're telling me I'm the primary guy that you traded for, and you traded your franchise cornerstone, and you really wanted to get me, yet I'm now
getting
in a smaller
paid
role. Yeah, right. Like it, but it's like so quintessentially this Wolves team of like, that doesn't make sense, but yet once you put it through all of the filters of how we know that this was the sense of it.
And that again is why what Finch can reply is Rob Dillingham is not playing because of you.
Right.
And that's true.
Took him.
And so it gets back to what we're saying. Now, what happens if Rob Dillingham starts to get minutes? You want to keep Mike Conley getting minutes. How's a guy like Dante DiVincenzo, who was once upset and is now kind of living with his reduced role? Next thing you know, Rob Dillingham is coming out, and maybe he gets.
The point is they chose this path.
Yeah, and the point, but the point is that
we just find a way to talk about Rob Dillingham.
Players are human beings, and so as much as you say and you sincerely believe that you will sacrifice for the team, you're still sacrificing, and sacrificing is no fun. That's why it's called sacrificing.
Right.
I mean, it's sacrifices based on somebody getting nailed to a cross, So it's no fun.
I've heard that story, yeah.
So it's no fun. I mean, very celebrated.
Do we have anything else here? We touch all the bases?
I think if we go to Jesus, I think we're done.
We can try some other religions. All right. No, this was fun. We'll both be back here, or we're here in San Francisco, so we will be back for game 4 as well, and we'll see where this goes. I think a main thing is, in practice tomorrow, I think they'll be looking at more answers for limiting Jimmy, and I think it's pretty clear that might be their best offense is Jimmy hunting, and they were trying to do like some show and recover stuff there. It was just like,
and I think you may have to put a body on Kuminga. I mean, he had 30 tonight, and this is me 48 hours ago saying, flash in the pan. Don't worry about Kuminga. He can't,
No,
And
it's
Steve
a
Kerr kinda
bad
backed
pan.
me up.
It's a bad pan. Like, that's the
I
thing.
know,
Like,
I know,
that's why
I
I
know.
was like, we all get what Kuminga's
right,
youthful issues are right now.
right.
But on this team that is so lacking juice, like, yeah. And the kid's got some pop, man. Like, he's
Right.
He
doesn't play well with others, but the fact he plays well at all makes him
Yeah.
eligible right now to help this team.
but the Warriors don't play well together without Steph anyways. So it's just kind of like, how do we get to 100 points? And they didn't do that. They didn't do that again tonight. But to the Wolves standpoint of it, they probably got to make sure they got to keep them under 100 again, because I'm not sure just because Ant had 28 in the second half and we praised Julius up and down, I still don't feel like super confident that the Wolves are going to be able to come out and have some exceptional offensive game in game 4. The path to that is probably Dante's his shot comes back and not, it'd be 3-point shooting. But if it is kind of a rock fight, like we're like we said at the beginning, we're talking about consistently getting 40% looks, 0.8 points per possession in the half court, like that's profitable in this series.
I think it's significant. I don't believe I'm somebody who is just relentlessly negative about this team. I think, generally speaking, I really enjoy the way the Timberwolves have played basketball ever since Chris Finch came.
Yeah, you have.
But
you did used to be. I've sat next to you for 8 years. You used to be relentlessly negative.
Yeah, well, I mean,
about
teams
on their
like
way.
Bad basketball.
No, I'm agreeing with it.
And so
you
I was negative tonight, and I was pretty negative almost the entire night, to the point where I really was begrudging them coming back, thinking, well, it doesn't erase the first 3 quarters of bullshit, and the vibe in that locker room and the vibe from Finch, they're saying, look, a win is a win at this time of year, and we'll take it. And maybe tomorrow it's a totally different attitude. Savor this one and don't step on the, bad vibe right now.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see if for a second straight series against a proud, celebrated franchise, they need to treat game 4 like it's a game 5, because it's very well could be, the last game that they have before Steph comes back.
No, Steph would be 6. That's the.
Let me see. 14 is
game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the 14th is game 5. You're right.
I mean, we don't know. They're going to give an update in 4 more days or something.
No. But I do think that the 14th, I don't think he'll play on the day of the update. So you're right. I think it will be. In any case, you can't afford to let these games against a clearly inferior foe go to waste. Not this late in the playoffs.
And I do think part of that's what Ant was wrestling with in the first half too.
Yeah,
as he does.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's why I think that Monday will be complicated.
And in case for listeners, if you didn't listen to the press conference afterwards, Ant was asked if his dunk in the fourth quarter got him going, and what Ant said was, "No, what got me going was when Kuminga dunked on me."
Right.
Like.
And that was a spin.
It was. I remember seeing that ever happen. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that happen, Ant? I haven't.
No. Well, because Kuminga's about as athletic as Ant is.
Yeah.
That's and it did. And so that is something that is Ant, and I think it's both like a folly and a real, instigator of his game is when he feels challenged.
Right.
He responds, and
you're right. That could be a good thing, right?
Yeah,
you're right.
Right, and it certainly was. Look at the second half. I mean, he scored 28
but
points.
I'm talking about the extension. Like, all right, Kuminga is somebody. Next time I have Kuminga, when he has me on the low block, let's see what happens.
Right. No, and I do think Ant is, or hopefully, for him, for them is that this second half was like, all right, understanding what this all is, on how they're guarding him, how they're playing him. But also understanding that even though it isn't Steph over there on the other side, that this is still a challenge. And and one that he shouldn't need Steph out there to be motivated to go and take this on. And hopefully he turned a corner at halftime tonight, and or after he got dunked on by Kuminga. But that's an important part of this, and that's a cylinder that needs to continue to be firing, because again, like I said, first 10 quarters of this series, not as much, but a really strong close that he closed out with Julius Randle in this game. So it's fun, Britt.
Yep.
We'll be back. Are you writing tomorrow?
Yeah, I won't be out until Monday, I don't think, because MinPost doesn't publish on weekends.
There you go. You guys can, if you're listening to this on Monday, check out minpost.com for Britt's sort of day after diagnosis of what's going on. These pods are a little bit harder to do when we're literally sitting down right afterwards. Like, you've been doing a good job. I've been enjoying your more sober writing of like,
I know.
Okay, this is what actually happened.
Who, what, when, where, why?
Yeah, no, it's good. I read it.
I usually put a little serif on it, but that's okay.
Get your Corona extra and everything. All right, we'll be back for the show. We'll be back Monday. After the game, there will not be, I guess this is the Sunday episode. So we'll be back then. Until then, he's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dance.